Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Schenectady City Council Committee meeting for Monday, December the 21st, 2020 to order. And we'll go right into government operations. Ms. Porterfield.
Yes, I'd like to call to order government operations. We have one item on the agenda. And so is Ms. Gallagher on? Aaron Gallagher? Okay, Mr. Colden.
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Gallagher, could you just go over this with us? And just give a little brief explanation. I know we got it in our packages, just a brief explanation of what this is. So for the council and the people listening.
Absolutely. So we've been participating in this intermunicipal bid with Capital Region BOCES since approximately 2013. They had reached out to me to see if they could get a copy of the resolution that we had on file. One could not be located, so I had decided to bring it before the council. This is a bid for copy paper. And because of the volume of copy paper in the bid, because of the intermunicipal agreement, we get much better pricing. So this new bid will actually save us about $2 a case.
Okay. So it's a new bid, but not a new process that we've been doing. Is that correct? We just getting a new resolution for the process that's already been ongoing?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Okay, hearing none.
I'll move it.
Question. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If there's nothing else to come before government operations, I'll ask them for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to call to order public safety, and the first item is intent to act as lead agency for the city pedestrian safety action plan project. Mr. Wallen.
Thank you. So what this is the city received state funding for pedestrian safety action plan project, PSAP it's called. The project is for the improvement of select signals in the downtown area. Due to the location of one of the signals being in the stockade at Union and, just make sure I get the right street, Union and North Ferry, it booted us from a type 2 action to a unlisted action, which means that we have to go through this process. We're working with the DOT on this process. The first step here is we're going to declare that the city is going to take the lead on this, then reach out to locals to make sure that there's no objections to that, and ultimately the mayor and the city will send out a letter, which I have here, which will be the intent to establish lead agency with the state and to say that there's no objections to doing so. So this is the first step. We do this on a couple projects a year, so through the state seeker project.
Any questions from my colleagues?
I'll move it. I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Wallen.
Thank you.
Next item is discussion regarding the revised Schenectady Police Department / Civilian Police Review Board Personnel Complaint Form. Ms. Porterfield, just before I hand it over to you, Mr. Williams, Carl Williams, who's a member of the Police Review Board, had sent us last week a revised version of the form that he and other members have worked on, and they would like to discuss it with us to see if we as a council have any change or any suggestions with regards to this form. So I will hand it over to Ms. Porterfield, and Mr. Williams also online.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mudavaren. As Mr. Mudavaren has explained it, and some of you, if not all of you, were on the call and went over the form. At this point in time, Mr. Williams, if you would just like to present an overview of the form. Hopefully, all council members had an opportunity to take a look at it. It was included in your packet. And so we'll welcome your comments. But after that, but Mr. Williams, would you just like to give us an overview of the intent and what has happened with this form? Is Mr. Williams on?
Yes, he's on.
Okay, I can not hear him. Okay, so for council members, have you had an opportunity to look at the form and do you have any input based on the form, looking at it and also being on the meeting last week? I think it was the week before. No, not yes, not no, nothing.
I did have a look at the form and the at the board meeting. I did make one suggestion in terms of the organization. I had requested there are a list of organizations there. I had requested to add the Guyanese American Center as a
Okay.
location where people can go to just file the complaint and to get help also. That
Okay.
would be a useful venue to service many within the Guyanese community. And also we have other agency that is going to be providing the same service to other neighborhoods. So that is my only recommendation. I had offered that at the board meeting 2 weeks ago also.
Okay. Any other council members? Mr. Williams apparently had internet problems and is trying to get back on, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that. So if you had an opportunity to look at this form, then there was an older form, and I have to first start out by saying that the Civilian Police Review Board did an excellent job in revising this form and capturing the information and making it a lot more user friendly. So I think that goes a long way. They added there was a page that was added that explained the process. It was a question I had earlier on of how this works, so people understood it. So I think that's great. The only thing I would like to see changed is the cover letter that goes out on this. Now, the Civilian Police Review Board, as we know, is covered by Chapter 93 of the City Code. So basically, it is a part of the city code. So the letter itself is an overview, actually a welcoming letter, and it's signed by the chief of police. I think that as a independent body that the CPRB is to be, that that actual letter should really come from the mayor's office. Because then if we're trying to establish that this is an independent body, I think having a letterhead go out from the police department with all the police officers' names on it doesn't send that message. I understand that that's how it used to be, but we are operating in a different time right now based on so many things that have happened and with police reform and all of that. And we continually talk about building trust with the community. And I think that it's just important that they see the community sees this as that the city is supportive of it, and that realize that the Civilian Police Review Board is part of the city code, and it doesn't separate the police from it at all, because on the second page you see that it says Schenectady Police Department. It has the police shield as well as the city shield. But I think it's important it does that. In addition to that, the letter, if you look at it, there's no way that you really know who this independent group of people are and that these are residents. And I think that message needs to be sent as well, so that people understand that these are residents. They could one day be on the Civilian Police Review Board for that matter. And these are the group of residents that live in Schenectady. They're not sworn officers or any of that. I think that needs to be there as well. And that's not including with the letter. So it is really my recommendation, not just from me, but from talking to people in general, in terms of just trying to get people to understand better what the CPRB does and what it represents, that letter, that welcoming letter or package, I guess we're gonna call it the welcome letter, come through the mayor's office, of course, with the public safety commissioner's name on it, as well. That is just my feedback based on conversations with numerous people outside of the CPRB as well as members inside the CPRB, and I think it's important as we move forward to take into consideration all those things. I understand we're not going to make any well, I won't say that I understand that, but that is my that's my recommendation after reviewing the form and the letter, that to put the package together that would create what we're trying to create with this new form with the CPRB.
Ms. Porterfield? Ms. Porterfield?
Before you go, before
It's not my committee.
My apologies.
Mr. Williams is back online, and why don't we give him an opportunity to walk us through what they have done, and then we'll go into more questions. Mr. Koja, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Council President Mudavarun and all remaining council members and everyone listening to the meeting tonight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm on my cell phone right now. I don't know what happened to my internet, so that's why my video is off, just so reduce some bandwidth. As you mentioned, the Civilian Police Review Board, we voted on this form that you currently have in front of you, and we approved it based on a 6-2 vote, 6 members in favor and 2 opposed. The major consensus behind those 2 opposing votes was, as Councilwoman Porterfield highlighted, the messaging on the first page and who should have the authority to put out that message. As a board, we voted in favor of having Chief Clifford's name be on the front. We had further discussions talking about whether there can be additional endorsements to include having the board president, the Civilian Police Review Board president, also placing their signature on that front page as well to show that there is additional consensus from other parties. However, hearing out Councilwoman Porterfield, if we were to make any adjustments to include expanding upon the message that highlights what the Civilian Police Review Board is, we would just need to address that back within our board. We can either have like an ad hoc committee meeting or something or what have you, but we would just need to bring that back to discussion. Moving on to the second page, we've had further discussions about how we're going to roll this form out to the community organizations. Those efforts are underway, which we believe will assist the community with understanding what our expectations are for the organizations, and then also putting the organizations on the best footing to be able to speak to a lot of the components of the form, to include whoever's name is on the front page, why that is, letting them know the procedures for processing complaints, and then be able to walk those individuals down the line with the remaining elements, which is going to be on the 3rd and 4th page, which is actually the crux of the complaint form. We seem to have no disagreements about this form. This is a completely revised form that takes out a lot of the police jargon, and I think it cleans it up very fluidly so that people who pick it up, regardless of whether you are regardless of whether you've ever processed a complaint, this reads very, very simply, and then you can just put in your information as necessary and file it accordingly. So again, where we currently are as a board, we're reaching out to the organizations, making sure that they're in favor of having their names be included, and then making sure that we have point of contacts to assist them with either handing out physical forms or processing electronic forms for complaints in the city.
That is your brief summary, Mr. Williams.
Yes, Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Koja.
Yep, thank you. And again, thank you all for working on this. The only suggestion I would have is where our listed community organizations are, if we can get addresses in there included as well. So if the Center for Community Justice, instead of just Barrett Street, putting the exact address down, same with City Mission, Community Fathers, and so on. We all know where the libraries are in Schenectady County Community College, but I just thought if we can include the actual addresses for those individual organizations, that would be appreciated. And also, I don't know if this is neat or not, but I do not see a contact for for our police review board on that complaint information sheet. Should there be an email, a generic email address to that board in case they have any questions, or will that just go through the cover letter page? And again, of course, we have to change the cover letter. Michael Ings is no longer a public safety commissioner, so that's the only little typo piece that I saw on that. But otherwise, very, very supportive of the new personal complaint form, and thank you all for working on that.
Mr. Williams, you had mentioned a moment ago that the discussion was centered around, we're talking about adding the chair of the police review board on the cover letter. Was that discussed at the board level, or that is something discussed at large?
That pretty much came about after we voted on the form, as is with just the chief's name, trying to get to a common ground where we just met in the middle between wanting to have the chief's name on the form and then whether to adopt either additional endorsements or to have another body be in charge of putting out that welcome message. We thought it was worth mentioning. We didn't pursue that avenue moving forward. However, if the council would request us to have those discussions again, can absolutely bring that topic of discussion back up with the review board.
We have Mr. Shave online. Mr. Shave, what is your thoughts on this form and this latest suggestion on adding the chair to the cover letter?
I have no problems adding the chair. I just want to make sure that people understand that the chief does the investigating and we review the work that's done. I just want to make sure that it's very clear this is his business, and it's also very clear that we oversee it. So my name on there is fine. About the groups, though, be a little careful. That's a tentative list of the groups. They have not all agreed to be part of this. So that's just a list of groups we plan to go after. And I've actually added a couple since then, League of Women Voters, some others. And so we'll be fixing that and also putting contact information right on there. So yes, contact information should be there, and it will be once the groups have approved. I've asked the groups to give us a letter to that effect, and then so that they understand the complaints might be coming their way for help, and that they should know what we're talking about. But the form itself is pretty easy to follow, and it should be no problem.
Thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues?
Mr. Mudavaren?
Suggestion? Go ahead, please.
I just want to ask Mr. Williams or Mr. Shave. Carl, did I hear you correctly that it was a 6-2 vote? And that was because of the cover letter? That 6 of you wanted the cover letter to remain the way it is, and 2 of you didn't. Is that what I heard?
Yes, that's what you heard. We voted twice. The first time we voted and then reconsidered after the chief had some, pretty decent sized issues with it. And then it came back to committee. We came up with a new front 2 pages that 6 of us went for, and 2 of us did not, but they did, at least one of them did volunteer to be part of the rollout committee. So I think nobody's really angry about it.
So I guess in response then, I would have to say that I think that we need to have the chief's name on this. Reading the letter, it really does, I think it presents it as something where the police are actually looking to build that trust and looking to have that outreach and support the Civilian Police Review Board. So I like the idea of Chief Clifford's name being on the letter. I definitely, I'd be open to having the chair of the Civilian Police Review Board's name on the letter as well. Did the review board draft this letter, or did the letter come from Chief Clifford? Or
we drafted one and then redrafted it with a lot of input from Chief Clifford.
Great. Okay.
I think he has pride in his work, and he wanted people to know that it's his people doing the investigation. And I think that's a trust building kind of thing. People connected, he should know what's going on, and that's good.
If Mr. Mudavaren, if I could just speak to that.
Go ahead, please.
First of all, that we as the elected representatives of the city. The city charter the city code is under our purview. So I will again reiterate, I think that letter needs to come from the city. And this does not in any way see that the chief is not proud of his work or any of that. It actually, and for those who are saying, well, we think it builds trust, et cetera, and so on. I have conversations with people on a more regular basis. I'm going to just have to say it just like that, where people don't feel that. So I think that it's important that even though it's just my voice that you're hearing, trust that it's not just my voice being spoken, and that maybe there are there are people that I encounter who more often than not will be people who will submit complaints to the Civilian Police Review Board that see it differently. So I think that we should try to look at from not just our own personal perspectives, like, well, I think it's good, or I think it, but the more global. And so not having the chief's name on the front and having the mayor's name on the front, to me, it says that, okay, we are building that trust. We know that the police does the investigation. It's absolutely clear on the rest of the form. But to say that we need the letter to say that, oh, you can trust me because the chief's name is on front. So I'm not sure what that messaging is, that you don't trust the chief. I'm not sure. That to me, I'm not really sure what that comment actually meant. However, again, I will say that I think we have to take into consideration the larger community in terms of that, and the building the trust, and the people who are more impacted, the more marginalized people who are impacted with that, groups that I've spoken with. And take into consideration how that looks, and realize this is not an indictment on the police department or the police chief or anything, but that this is just saying that this is a city. CPRB is under our purview. Here's a letter coming from the mayor to welcome you to this process. If the chief names needs to be on it as well, or the CPRB chair as well, I clearly think that the welcoming letter, which is attached to the package that belongs to the police department, which should come from our highest elected office in the city of Schenectady. So again, it's not my own personal opinion, but just based on input and from people, and talk to them, as we've just not only talked about the CPRB, but about police reform in general. And this is a large part of that. So those are my, one other thing I just wanted to say, in terms of the second page, I just wanted to make sure it lined up with 93.13 of the city code, which says that not only can people get their help there, but they can also receive forms from those numerous groups that are on there. That already says that in our city code of 93.13. And also the NAACP is one of the groups that is in the city code, but not one of the groups that's listed in that form. So I just want to make sure that that group gets included in that.
Mr. Motivaran?
Go ahead, please.
First, I'd like to thank Mr. Shave and the Police Review Board for their hard work. They've done a very good job, and I want to commend you for that, and thank you very much. In regards to the first page, yeah, I completely will disagree with taking Chief Clifford's signature off. If we're trying to build trust with the police department, and we're trying to build relationships, and you change that letter and take his name off of it, you're inherently saying, well, you don't trust the police or the chief, so therefore it must be the mayor's signature. That's not building the relationships that we need to build and the trust that needs to be built within our community. And, I think this is something that the CPRB has passed. They've put quite a bit of thought into it, obviously, from, the meeting we all attended, plus with the conversation we're hearing tonight. And, I would object to the removal of the chief's name. I think it might be a good idea to add the chair of the committee as a civilian portion of the review process. But I think we need to build those relationships, and by taking that off, we're inherently saying, this is not a process that you can trust, and I just disagree with that.
Mr. Motivaran?
I'm sorry, let me just say this, that I think that not having the mayor's name says that we take no ownership of it.
Mr. Mutaveran?
Ms. Parazzo, please go ahead.
I guess I'm just really confused by all this because my perception of the board is that although they work along with the police, it is a civilian oversight circumstance that helps to add transparency. I don't understand the trust mechanism versus the non-trust mechanism. I honestly don't think the chief signing that letter shows that he's trusted or not trusted. I don't see that as a measure. I don't understand what that is. And to me, it seems as if we've put this process in place for people to feel comfortable coming forward to complain about an interaction that they had with a police officer. But yet the police department is sending the letter. And I have to agree that to have a city manager, the mayor's oversight, I mean, to me, if the letter comes from the mayor, it's saying, listen, this is part of the city, it's part of our city code, it's part of the oversight. Yes, we work directly with our police chief. Yes, we, whatever the case may be. I just don't understand this matter of it shows trust or it doesn't show trust. Because to me, it's supposed to be somewhat of an independent voice. So then why wouldn't you include that the chief, that the board works closely with the chief and that the mayor has oversight to the entire process? I mean, I don't feel really strongly one way or another. It just, to me, it seems like if you're talking about transparency, that's an important part of it, to say that our city's executive has oversight of this circumstance, and certainly while giving the chief shout out. But I would be curious to hear a little bit more of why the 6 members of the board felt so strongly about having the chief's signature on it, when it is a function of our city code. So I don't know. I remain very confused with some of the statements that were made tonight with regard of trust and distrust. I don't think it's a matter of that. It's a functioning board for a purpose.
Any other suggestion from my colleague?
Mr. Mutaveran?
Go ahead, please.
So I'm supportive of the board. The board has voted. I think we should move forward with what the board has suggested. They've done a fabulous job with this. I think it's, the board's mentioned how they perceive it. Everyone has presented, logical, process that we can go forward with. The form is very easy to use. It is going to be investigated by the police department. So I guess, we should just move forward with what the recommendation is from the board, would be my consideration. So, thank you.
Mr. Motivaran?
Go ahead, Mr. President.
Yeah, my original question is going to be to the second piece there, because we're still going to discuss the guidelines and bylaws, correct? That's coming up on item number 3. But talking about this form here, I'm on the City of Albany website, the CPRB over there, and in no place does it even mention the police chief or anybody on the welcoming letter. The letter, of course, comes from that board. Right on their website. And also in regards to that, the other question I had is why do we have that? Are you able to speak and read English? I just caught that, and I happened to go to Albany site. Is there a reason for that, Mr. Shave or Mr. Williams? Why is that check off on the bottom there that I have the ability to read and speak English?
Well, I mean, it's not a requirement that you read and speak English, but what we're trying to do is we've received complaints where the English really wasn't good enough to really understand. They needed some help to fill it out, perhaps. And particularly until we get a Spanish language complaint form, which is in the works. But there's 30 different languages in Schenectady, the school district says. So that little box there was for mostly for statistical record keeping. And
Yeah, I'd almost like to see that removed. I almost see that discriminating to some effect. I don't know, but again, is this going to be a complaint form that's going to be English fillable online as well, Mr. Shave, with the PDF? Again, I'm looking at Albany's. They also have it in Spanish, and it's also it's a fillable PDF format online. Would we have that capability to do that here in the city of Schenectady? Can anybody answer that question?
well, yes, Carl built the PDF version. We don't have a Spanish version yet, but it's Chief Clifford says that he might be able to devote some resource to that.
Great. If we can do that fillable form, I think that's excellent. That's really a resource that's going to be needed. So, but again, I'm fully in support of this. Those two little minor things, and really making sure we clearly outline the addresses of the agencies that we're able to pick these forms up within the Schenectady city area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President Munavaran, do you mind if I make an additional comment?
Yes, I was going to ask you. Well, go ahead and then I will ask you a question.
So in response to Councilwoman Brazos and Councilwoman Porterfield's just input and feedback regarding the first page, I think at a minimum, if the council would be open to it, we can, in addition to requesting or auditing our community organizations as they receive potential complaints from community members, we can do an audit to see how that first page is received. And then at a minimum, we can just bring back that feedback within like 30 days or 60 days or 90 days to be able to speak to the efficacy of whether the Chief Clifford's message is being well received in the community. And I think that that would be able to address any of the issues that are present on the council, and also be able to address some of the issues that we had within our Civilian Police Review Board. I think that we can provide the council.
And to add to that, Mr. Williams, if you mind, take it back to the board to discuss adding the chair of the board on that cover letter. Is that something that you might want to discuss with the board? It will be helpful to kind of like, okay, the board is endorsing this letter also along with our police chief and assistant chief.
Yes, Council President Munavaran, I also have adding the addresses, adding a contact for the Civilian Police Review Board, and then discussing whether we should remove the English language component as Councilman Kosher recommended.
Mr. Munavaran?
Go ahead, please.
I understand completely Mr. Kosher's suggestion with the English speaking, but we might consider keeping that because if somebody needs translation services, we might be able to get them that if they're saying they're having difficulties with the English part. So then we can actually, until the Spanish forms are up and running, we could get people who need it the assistance they need. But either way, I'm fine.
Yeah, but to add to that also, I mean, when these individuals will go to the organization for help, I mean, those individuals there that is assigned to help these people complete the form will fill it out the way in terms of the English version and send it out to the police review board. I don't think that's necessary to have that that section there or that tab.
Munavaran,
we have police chief online. Would you mind make a comment with regards to this form? I'm not putting any spot. I'm sorry. If you would like to, the floor is open. Are you there? Chief? You might be having some audio.
I think he's having audio issues because the mute was on, now it's off and you can't hear anything.
Does that work?
Oh, yes.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. Thank you, President Munavaran. What I think that the way I'd like to start this is to point out that this letter, this whole complaint packet, and changing it was brought up months ago. Really, I want to say it's either before we started the reform and reinvention discussions. It was definitely over the summer that we've been having discussions with the chairman Shave and co-chairman Williams. And this was the first item that we decided to tackle as it related to improving the Civilian Police Review Board. And I thought we were on a good track. We were having discussions between the police department, myself as the chief, and our Office of Professional Standards, and the leadership at the Civilian Police Review Board. And all of a sudden, this process has now gone sideways and is being looked at by the council, which I'm not sure why that's happening. It's like there's a parallel thing going on now with our efforts at reforms. But as it relates to this form itself, as I have told many people, as the chief of the department, I think it is very important that the public knows that any complaint that is made is on my watch and it has my direct interest at heart. And I take pride in the fact of the discipline that's been instilled in the department over the past 4 years. The number of people that we have not only disciplined, but retrained, the level of supervision that has improved is all as a result of this complaint process. Every single complaint that we receive has my attention and the attention of my command staff for improvements, potentially discipline. And when somebody comes to the police department with a complaint about one of my police officers, I want them to know that it has my attention, not the mayor's attention, not Mr. Shaves or Mr. Williams' attention, my attention. So when they come to the police department to make a complaint, they're making it to me, and they will get a letter from me. If the Civilian Police Review Board on their own wants to have their own separate letter, that is perfectly okay. It's within the code that they have the ability to do that. And I would not challenge them or say that they can't do it. What I thought we were doing was working together on this to form a letter that we're both happy with. And if that's the case, then we will continue to move forward with it. But I don't want to stand in the way of the review board wanting to have their own letter if that's the case also. But anybody that makes a complaint to one of my supervisors or comes to the police department to make a complaint, will not only get a letter from me with the packet, they will get a letter from me when the investigation is concluded with the results of it. That's all I have on this.
Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Mudavarun, can I ask the chief a question?
Go ahead, please.
So, there's the Civilian Police Review Board, but there's also the Office of Professional Standards. So I guess for me, what the clarifying part was that the CPRB would be this independent body. So just clarify the difference between the OPS and the CPRB in terms of this process, which is why I thought that, again, the letter should come through the mayor's office. But so if you could explain to me the difference between the two, Chief.
Well, sure. If you look at the Civilian Police Board Chapter 93 code, it says that the purpose of this chapter is to create an independent review body with respect to complaints of misconduct by officers of the Schenectady Police Department. Its goals are to improve communication between the police department and the community, to increase police accountability and credibility with the public, and to create a complaint review process that is free from bias and informed of actual police practices. So when a complaint is made to the police department, a case is opened up. It's a normal investigative case jacket, notes, evidence, and it's an investigation that is completed, and then a summary report is done by the sergeant or the lieutenant, whoever's doing that. It is then forwarded to myself for review, and that review at that point is only for the thoroughness of the investigation and the findings of it. Once I sign off on that, It then will be forwarded to the assistant chief, the bureau chief, for determination if discipline or training or both will be recommended. Once that happens and it goes through that process on a monthly basis, they package up all the completed civilian complaints. Then they do their redaction for the double blind system, and they forward them to the Civilian Police Review Board for review to see, basically to review the whole case to see if appropriate action was taken on that complaint.
So essentially, you're saying they really kind of work hand in hand. OPS moves it over to CPRB. Am I understanding that correctly?
CPRB gets to see the finished product and then has the opportunity to discuss the case with the investigative detectives. They're both detectives, lieutenant and or sergeant, and ask questions. Should they have any questions, they could also make recommendations and then come back. They, I believe if you read the code, they additionally have subpoena power if they ask questions or ask for information that's not provided.
Okay. So I guess my only other question is, since Chapter 93 is part of the city code, how do you see the city council / the mayor as a part of letting people know that it's part of the city code? Because I personally don't think that that message is in the cover letter, and it doesn't make a difference, Chief, that that you wrote the letter, however the letter was written. I just want to make sure the messaging for the people who are going to see this. So I just wanted to be clear if this is not about Chief Clifford at all. This is about making sure that the messaging that we want to get out to the public is the message. And again, there's no mention of who the members of the CPRB are at all anywhere in any of that. So I just wanted to see, as Chapter 93 being under the city code, how do you see the mayor's role, the city council role in terms of this at all, if this packaging?
Well, I think that is something that we could discuss. Carl and Dick and even other members of the board, we can discuss that. And I'm actually questioning whether it would need to be put into the cover letter, or if it should be in the letter that I send at the very end, which it actually a little bit more of a, it explains at a little better level that process where your letter will now go to the Civilian Police Review Board for review and oversight. And so that's a possibility. We don't currently do that, but that's a possibility. I mean, or if you think that further clarification on the structure or the role of the Civilian Police Review Board is important in the original letter, we can certainly add that. I mean, I know we mentioned it. I can't remember. I don't have the letter in front of me right now, exactly what it says, but that wouldn't be a problem, adding that clarity into the letter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any other suggestion from my colleagues?
Well, may I?
Go ahead, please.
I am looking at the letter again while we've been talking, and just to respond to Chief Clifford, who doesn't have the letter in front of him, it does outline what the role of the Civilian Police Review Board is, and it in my mind does say that it's going to the Office of Professional Standards for that initial investigation. But I think it clearly spells out what the role of the Civilian Police Review Board is as well. Although, it doesn't have the names of the Civilian Police Review Board as a part of this. But I do think that, I guess I feel that because the police department is part of the city structure, and the chief is in charge of the police department, I still think that it's appropriate that this comes from the chief of police. And, I would support having, the chair of the Civilian Police Review Board's name on it as well. But it just makes sense to me that it comes from the person who actually is, the person that's going to be responsible. And I understand, of course, that the mayor and the city council are, the ultimate buck stops here. folks, but I think it's the same in any organization. You'd want to be hearing from the person that oversees the specific actions that are being taken place. And that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Patrick. Any other
This is
suggestions?
Mr.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. Matuver, may I?
Go ahead, Ms. Miriam Kajasti.
My name is Miriam Kajasti, and I am a member of the Civilian Review Board. And Mr. Shave, I was not upset, I was not angry, and I did vote it down for the very fact that, and here is what I said, at any point within the complaint process, the chief has the authority to send out 1 letter, 2 letters, 10 letters to the complainant. At the very least, the initial letter should come from the review board. That is how I feel. If I was someone complaining about the way a particular police officer treated me, whether it was appropriate or inappropriate, when I receive a complaint, and yes, I would have preferred to have the review board letter as the cover letter. That is why I felt it was necessary to not vote with the cover letter as is. And the chief just said so, that he could send a letter at any time. And the final letter, the final letter is the chief's letter. So to me, I don't understand why it has to be the cover letter. Thank you for allowing me to voice my opinion.
Mr. Williams, I don't think there's any other comments or suggestions from my colleagues. So what I would like to suggest to Mr. Williams, since you are taking the lead on this forum and the revision with the other members, may I recommend that there are a lot of suggestions this evening, and if you can take it back to the board for discussion to see if any suggestions, that can be discussed and maybe add to this form. It will be welcome to the group and to the public for usage. And overall, I think it's a good step in the right direction. The form, especially the form change, the letter. I think the right now the hot topic is the letter, and I don't see a lot of issue with it other than some names be added. If that can be done, it will be helpful. If another letter can be added from the CPRB, and I would just put that on the board to make that recommendation, because this is an independent board. And the best we could do for the community to make them more pleasing in terms of this form and to complete it in the way that they feel comfortable. At the end of the day, the police department has to be the investigative body, so they have to be an integral part of this process. So I will ask that if you don't mind, take it back to the board for discussion. And if possible, let us know if anything else can be changed. I will welcome that.
Absolutely, Council President. And then at a minimum, you can expect an email from me this evening just outlining the key items discussed. That way, if there was anything that I missed, you or any of your council members can let me know prior to our meeting with the Civilian Police Review Board.
Yeah, and also at the same time, when you're reviewing with your members on the board, also please include the police chief in all discussion going forward in terms of these suggestions that were happening tonight here, any change that the board is voting on to send back to us for review. I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion on this item. The next item is review of the guidelines, bylaws for the Civilian Police Review Board with the repeal of 58. Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mudavaran. I would add to that, not just with the repeal of 58, but also police reform, which is what we've been talking a lot about. The last meeting, my computer died basically, so I wasn't able to we weren't able to go over this. So what I just want to basically, to all of my colleagues, I sent you a packet on December 5th, which gave you it's a toolkit called Independent Oversight, and it gave you a list of the 5 different types of civilian police review boards there could be. And in addition to that, there is an evaluation tool that said, here is what independent boards look like, and what does your legislation say? And so what I'd asked my colleagues to do was to actually do that, because I don't want it to be what I say or what someone else says, but basically to do their own review, take their own look at the guidelines themselves, and make that evaluation. I didn't get any feedback from anyone, so I don't know if people had the opportunity or did do that. But I'm asking that you do. I do have feedback myself, and that we know that this is a larger part. This is a part of the larger police reform, and this is I think that it was indicated this was parallel to the police reform. And what I'm going to say is that during the police reform discussions, the CPRB was mentioned a few times, but was not really given a lot of focus. And if we're going to really be working on police reform overall and getting ready for April 1st, then we should look at all parts of it. And this legislation is a major part of what we do in terms of policing in the city of Schenectady, which is why I've been bringing it forward since July, and that we should do this. And then when the Finn Institute has their findings, we will also have what we have come up with. And then as a council, we could look at it overall. But I just wanted to make sure that that Chapter 93 and the CPRB was not left out as we talk about police reform in the city of Schenectady, because it's an important part of it. So, which is why, again, I used an independent tool that I sent out to my colleagues to take a look at, and asked them to look at the legislation and see where we were versus where they thought we should be, and what needs to be changed, what could be the same. Tonight, I just have a couple of things. And one of them is within it, it asks, I can't remember exactly, well, first of all, I did mention 9313, which says that these particular groups you can get a form from them to complete, your civilian police review, your complaint against the police. So I think that it's important that we have those groups, all the groups that are going to be in there, and also make sure that those groups know that we're asking them to do that. So that's in 9313. There's another part which it says that if to be a member of the board, you cannot have a felony. And I'd like to see that language changed. I would like to see that if the felony is against a police officer, absolutely not. You cannot be a member of this board. I would agree with that 100%. However, once a person has completed their time and they no longer have a parole officer or probation officer, and then they've also gotten back their right to vote, I don't see that that individual not have an opportunity to serve on this board. So I think we should take that into consideration. People can now vote again. And again, barring it being a felony against a police officer, I would certainly keep that language in. I would make sure that language is in there. But other than that, I would not say that a person who has a felony, because it doesn't have to be police related, because we just talked about that. So I think that we should remove that language and that keeps people from sitting on this board. And additionally, the last piece of this talks about an advisory committee. And initially that advisory committee was just put together, and once the board was up and running, it no longer was meeting. I think that we should change that language so that the advisory committee stays there and they meet like quarterly or give their feedback quarterly based on their review of the Civilian Police Review Board. It also says that we will get reports that are quarterly. And so then I think we should do those, make sure that we get those reports quarterly. And unfortunately, I don't have it right in front of me. I'm just drawing off my notes because I could not find my hard copy of it. So at this point in time, that's what I have for that. And I'm not sure if anyone else has anything.
Mr. Mudavaren.
Go ahead, please.
So actually, this is a question for the mayor. I know that the mayor and the chief have been working diligently on this. I've been on a lot of the meetings. I couldn't attend the last one, but Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious where we're at with the process. You know, I know the Finn Institute is a partner in this, and I was curious as, you know, are we on a good timeline here? And you know, where are we? Can we just get an update from your perspective? Because, you know, you need to give us some sort of, you know, feedback as you compile everything. So if you could let us know your thoughts.
Sure. You know, the governor's executive order set the mayor and the chief of police and the respective political subdivisions will chair this police reform committee. So I think Schenectady, we've done a very good job doing a broad-based outreach within the community. We were fortunate to get the Finn Institute to come on board early as a research partner, and we have taken the minutes of the meetings, the input that's been provided, the testimony that's out there, and have submitted it to the Finn Institute for now their review and compilation. And you have to remember, they have worked with the city of Schenectady before, so they have a greater historical perspective than other groups that might have come in a similar position. So they have that now, they're compiling it. And I think, I don't, Chief Clifford's still on, when they're going to get that back to us, it would be sometime right after the first of the year. Is that
Chief
correct?
is on, please.
Yes, that's what we expect, Mayor. They're working on a survey, hopefully before the end of the year to put that out, and then hopefully they'll have everything wrapped up by the middle of January as far as reporting back to us.
So that would come back, and then we'd be able to compile what would be the recommendations to go back to the city council. Some of these, I think, could be things that the chief might be able to implement himself. I've said there might be things within my prerogative to implement, some things that might have to go back to the city council. Also, there may be things that would require state enabling legislation, or the things that would not only affect just Schenectady, but would affect other communities in how they handle policing. And I think that's part of what the governor's goal is to bring that all together, to have that in place. And so from Councilmember, your question, we've got the information, and it's with the Finn Institute. They're compiling that. There's also going to be a survey coming back by mid-January, and then after that, we will put together, in coordination with the council, a plan and recommendation that will go back for formal adoption by the city council.
Mr.
And then be able to
Mudavaren.
send it to the governor by the 1st of April or the end of March.
Mr. Mudavaren.
Carrazzo, go ahead, please.
How has the Civilian Police Review Board specifically been addressed in these meetings? And will there be some sort of data collection within this survey that specifically addresses just the CPRB?
I don't know if the chief can answer that. I've not had that level of detailed questions with the staff and the professors from the Finn Institute.
Well, interestingly enough, in the executive order, the CPRB isn't even listed in the governor's orders, but we did include it as an area that we were going to be looking at. What level of data that they collect, I'm not sure, but since the survey I know hasn't been put out, we could certainly speak to them and ask them to include questions in their survey regarding CPRB before they put it out.
If we're being asked to basically not work on this because of the other work that's being done, I think that's a crucial bit of data for us to look at. Ms. Porterfield is right. This is part of our city code that the council oversees. So this is council work. So I think that would be crucial data for us to have if you're asking for us to wait to look at this, which I'm not quite sure about that, but that's another story. I personally give kudos to Ms. Porterfield for her diligence on this. She's absolutely right, as far as I'm concerned, that we should be taking a look at this, and I just don't understand why the other council members aren't willing to do the work to move in a forward direction, which is something that falls under our purview. However, if we're going to collect data through the Fin Institute, well, then it makes sense to wait. But I certainly hope that that is something that would be included.
Mr. Mudavaren? Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead, please.
Well, I actually, with all respect, I know that I have been attending every single one of these meetings. I think I missed one since the reform process started. And I would have to say that I learned an awful lot about the Police Review Board through those meetings, especially the ones that Mr. Shea and Mr. Williams were part of. And then, of course, there was the meeting that we had with the Police Review Board where we went through everything. But right at the start, when Ms. Porterfield first brought it up, I did go through with a fine-tooth comb the Chapter 93, had a few questions. I was one of the people that suggested that I didn't want to see us trying to come up with our own recommendations at the same time that all this work was being done by the Police Reform Task Force. I made sure to check with the staff person who is working with the Police Reform Task Force to make sure that it was a topic of conversation. And it certainly was something I heard about through at least 2 of the meetings of the Police Reform Task Force and the steering committee. So I think that I can at least speak for myself that I did a thorough review of that. I also went through the materials that Ms. Porterfield sent us. We didn't get a chance to talk about that last week, but I do personally, I want to get the report. At the last steering committee meeting, I think it was last week, we did hear from the Fin Institute. We also heard from the Civilian Police Review Board talking about this, specifically about this form. So it was another opportunity for us to learn from them, and also the Clergy Against Hate also spoke at that particular meeting. And we also learned about the new hire advisory board, which someone just mentioned, but police chief has actually already moved forward with a couple of folks from the steering committee. Mr. Rivas had made a suggestion, and they've already actually implemented that one particular suggestion where they've involved community members in interviewing at least one prospective police officer so far. And they're still working on strengthening that process, but I really appreciate that they did that. The only thing that I would say at this point about the Police Review Board is that in terms of, if you want me to be specific, but in terms of, there's a section in here that talks about the training of the Police Review Board. And I just wanted to say that I thought that maybe perhaps they should add something in there. And maybe they do this, maybe they were just listing some of the topics, but I think that having a training session on equity issues and anti-racism would probably be a good thing for the Civilian Police Review Board as well. So I don't know, maybe that already is happening, it's just not in the code. So that's all I have to say about that right now.
I got something to say. Can I say something?
Go ahead, sir.
Just so you know, it's no big deal. The CPRB on its own in executive session, we're having a series of Zooms to see if we can come to some consensus on improvements to suggest to you folks. So we've had 2 of these meetings. We're going to have a third. We'll probably come up with some things that we all agree on and some things we don't necessarily agree on, but here's the 2 sides of the matter. Maybe you can use that as a starting point. But just so you know, we're not sitting here waiting for steering committee or you folks to call us in. although we're happy to be here for you. That's it.
When is your next meeting with regards to making these suggestions to the council?
Our next official meeting is, I think we meet on the second week of January for a regular board meeting on a Wednesday, the prior Wednesday. So it's January something. Let me look on my calendar.
January 6th?
Yeah, and then we meet officially on the 13th.
So on the 6th, you will be reviewing with the rest of the members' suggestions.
Yeah,
you will present to the council with regards to Chapter 93.
Yeah, we're going to bring up all the ideas we have for change. You know, we might miss a few, that's fine, but we'll just get our heads together on what we have.
Mr. Mudavaren?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead, please.
So I just want to clarify that this discussion is around Chapter 93, and I know that governs the CPRB, but I just want to make sure that we stay focused on the fact that we're talking about the legislation here. And also, in terms of the advisory committee that the chief has put together is to for them to interview incoming potential officers. The advisory committee that is mentioned in the Chapter 93 is different. It's not the same. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about two separate advisory committees. It's not the same thing, and they don't have the same function. They will not be doing the same thing. So I don't know if we need to call it this advisory committee versus that advisory committee. So just to make sure, it's two different. They would have two separate functions, and again, this is creating legislation. It's our responsibility. So I don't see that we're doing anything over and above. And I also attended almost all of the meetings except one, public safety, because it was the middle of the day. I wasn't able to do it, of the meetings. And again, there was no meeting whose sole purpose was to discuss the CPRB. There were meetings where people brought it up and they thought how it functioned versus how it didn't function. That did happen. This, however, discussion is about what our legislation looks like. Are we doing what the legislation says? Do we need to make changes in the legislation? And is it being effective and impactful? So we haven't looked at it probably in a few years. So now we're looking at it now as part of our police reform. So just to lend some clarity to that, folks, that this is what this is really about. It's about making sure that our legislation, we complete the package when we can submit our thing to the governor on April 1st, but also that when the Finn Institute brings their findings, we also, along with anything that the CPRB wants to move forward with itself, the members, and their suggestions, that when we get ready to look at it, that we have everything in front of us and not wait until we get the Finn Institute and say, oh no, this piece is missing. Because that was not even a particular question, and all the questions that were asked, that question was never a question of what do you see how the police interact in your community, various things like that. But how do you think the Civilian Police Review Board functions was never a question, which would have brought that discussion forward. So just want to make sure that we're clear about, what our purpose is here. So that's what I've asked folks to do. Thank you, Ms. Patrick, for taking a look at that. And I think we should just continue to make sure that we give our input, and when we get the information from the Finn Institute, we move forward with all of the input that we have so that we can have a comprehensive package to deliver on April 1st. Thank you, Mr. Mudavaren.
Thank you. I see Maureen is raised her hand. Maureen?
Oh.
Is there any other comments from my colleagues?
I'm sorry, Councilman. I did not want to make a comment. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, I might have misspoken. It actually is called the New Hire Advisory Committee as opposed to the advisory committee that's in the Chapter 93. So that was probably my error in speaking. Thank you, Ms. Porterfield, for that.
Thank you. Ms. Porterfield,
So yes, Mr. Mooneyvan, what I will do is submit my, I'll have my comments put together in writing to submit. And I guess they would go to the collaborative. And again, I invite my colleagues, I'll wait until the first meeting in January. And if colleagues, I think we should put our concerns together and submit them as one. So if no one else has any other concerns or changes they'd like to see happen, then that's fine too. But I would hope that as a council, we would put all of our information together and submit it. And if people are 100% comfortable with the way that it is now, I understand that. There would be no comments from those individuals, but from those that do have comments or concerns, that we compile it and submit it as one body, which is what we are, and to the police collaborative to be considered as they do their deliberations and put together their data and findings. Thank you.
thank you. The next item is discussion, snow plowing and snow removal. Ms. Karen Willisky, Bolsnas.
Thank you, Mr. Mudavaran. I think everyone realizes that we had 30+ inches of snow dumped in an extremely fast time rate, 2 to 3 inches an hour over 10 hours on Thursday. We've, historic, I think I've heard the 8th largest ever, 5th largest. I'm not even sure where we actually ended up. First of all, I want to commend the staff and their valiant effort on trying to maintain the streets being cleared. But at the end of the day, we failed. And we need to, I do not want to point fingers. I'm not bringing this up to do that. I'm bringing this forward to figure out what the solutions would be going forward. How are we as a team, and I do mean this as a team, as the city council and the executive staff with the mayor, going to address a snowfall to this magnitude? Do we need equipment? Do we need more, staff? Do we need more vendors? How are we going to address this going forward? And we cannot, my phone has not stopped ringing since Thursday. And we need to do better. And I do mean we all of us, we're all in this together, and we need to understand what's necessary for us to move forward with the next snowstorm. We're going to get one. Now, I'm in hopes that we don't get another 30+ inches of snow, but I am concerned that if we have a lot of snow on the ground, and if they call for more, a 6-inch snowstorm could cripple the city right now. And we need to, as a city, address those issues that I've just said. Do we need to get, more equipment? Do we need to have more, people on staff? Do we need to get more vendors? Whatever it is, I think we need to move forward with a plan together to determine how we're going to address these issues. So I thought I'd, start with that. And I know I've had conversations with, a couple of the council people, and I know there's other concerns out there, but we need to figure this out as a team, whether it's the equipment. I know there was a snow blowing apparatus that was in the budget, the capital expenditure budget for last year. My recommendation would be, let's see how we can get that purchased as soon as possible and move forward with our capital expenditures.
Mr. Mudavaran?
Go ahead, please.
I think that the staffing and the equipment are important considerations, obviously, and I do think that we need to have some sort of review and evaluation so that we are prepared when this happens again, because as Councilwoman ZW just said, it will happen again, unfortunately. But I also have concerns regarding the parking issues and the responsibilities that we do all have to each other in terms of getting the word out there when folks have to move their cars, the signage that might be supporting that. I know later in the agenda, I think we're talking about parking again, so I don't want to, go on too much about that, but these are just some of the things that I do think that we need to be thinking about. I know I got one one of the calls that I got out of the several calls that we had over the last few days definitely had to do with towing as well. I mean, I think that businesses were being affected on at least on this end up at the Upper Union Business District, and so I got a call about a vehicle that needed to be towed. So I'd like to have some more information on, you know, how we're doing that. How do we get the word out that more effectively that people will get towed, and are we actually towing? I know that everybody's short-staffed and all that, but I think that's important too. I mean, the plows aren't going to be able to get through if people don't have a place to park their cars. We know that they need to move their cars, but I think that we all have seen going around the city that that's not necessarily happening. So I think that's something that I'm concerned about. Again, like Ms. ZW said, I don't think we need to point fingers. I think we just have to figure out how we're going to move forward and try to solve this. I know it was a big deal last year as well, although I wasn't, you know, on the council. So I just think we have to come up with some strategies together about this. I'd be interested to see what other people had to say.
Mayor McCarthy, would you mind give us an update?
Thank you, Mr. President. The nature of this storm, because of the magnitude, and it's been pointed out, the rate of fall really challenged any planning to keep up with it. And there's a difference between snow plowing and snow removal. The quantity of snow that fell, there wasn't any place to put it. So when you plow it off to the side, if you're moving it to the curb line, we were compounding it on cars that already had a huge amount of snow on them, putting it on the sidewalks. Unfortunately, people then were taking and putting it back into the streets, which makes it difficult for cars to get down the street. And there were people who were driving their cars, which was literally just impossible. So they were getting their cars stuck, and then that blocked the street and prohibited areas from being plowed. We have worked through that, and we brought in outside contractors. The governor declared a state of emergency for a number of counties. Schenectady was one. We worked with the state Office of Emergency Preparedness. They made available equipment from the state DOT. We have 4 private contractors that we brought in, and we're still working now on snow removal. That's largely putting a payloader in to scoop the snow out and to put it in a truck and then get it moved out of the way. Our best coordinated effort now, probably on a routine basis, happens in the stockade, where you have narrow streets, still fairly dense parking, and there are concerns from the fire department whenever a storm starts to be able to move a large fire apparatus into that neighborhood in the unfortunate set of circumstances that a fire would occur. So we tend to go to that neighborhood first for the snow removal, to get the streets opened up, to get them accessible. In over time, they've got a fairly strong neighborhood association. They've developed a fairly comprehensive email list, and the neighbors have worked with the city crews or private contractors to get in and do the mop-up operation. It's not a perfect science. There's always a little bit of variance in each one of these storms. We, again, didn't rise to, I believe, what the expectations were from the residents. The magnitude of the storm, again, was record-breaking, and we're still doing cleanup. We're going to continue to do that over the next few days. So I don't know if you have specific questions or comments on it.
Mr. Mudavan, may I address the mayor?
Go ahead, please.
One of the concerns, and Ms. Patrick brought it up, was cars that are, if they're parked where there's signage throughout the city and everyone knows where a priority street is, why can't we have tow trucks go and tow some of those cars so that we don't have these cars making it, it's more time, money, and energy for the snowplow to go around it and then come back. People have been told that they need to move their car, and if you don't move your car, I strongly feel your car needs to be towed. And I think if we start instituting a towing process where, if someone hasn't moved their car and they know it's on a priority street, or it's on the, if we do right, the odd even process, people will realize that the snow, your car is going to be towed. We shouldn't have business owners calling us and saying, they're trying to move the snow off of the street in front of my business, and there's a car there and trying to get it towed. I just want to know if we can get a more succinct process in place where maybe a tow truck can follow, a city truck that's trying to plow and move that car that's blocking the way. And I don't know, what it would cost for us, but I think it might be a little more efficient and effective way to get the streets cleared. And I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, we did do towing, but again, in the stockade, we try and do that as the last resort. So we work with the police to do bullhorning. We post the streets. The police officers will run license plates, try and identify the owners of the vehicles, and to get them moved out of the way. We're more aggressive on the priority streets. There's always somebody who, through absent-mindedness, being out of town, some story ends up not complying. It challenges the resources to handle all of them when the storm is of this magnitude. Because of the cars being really embedded in the snow, the towing time also was increased to go in to get it hooked up, to pull it out. And then the tow truck can't tow the car with all the snow on it, so the snow gets pushed off, which is back in the road. So it's not a perfect science, but we try and work through each of the situations to minimize the inconvenience that residents expect or experience as a result of these storms.
Mr. Mutaveran?
Go ahead, Ms. Perez.
Well, I'll start on a positive note in that, as we all did, I got numerous phone calls, emails, texts, messages, everything. And I can tell you that there were several very specific circumstances that were emergent and urgent. And the mayor was very responsive and took care of these things right away. One was a person who couldn't get out of their driveway and their furnace had broken down, and we all know how cold it was. And that was taken care of right away. Another was, two others were people having snow dumped either at the end of their driveway so they couldn't get out of their driveway, or in front of their garage door. They couldn't get their garage door open because, their snow blower was in there. Now we'll go on to the negative. So thank you, Mayor. I give you full credit for your responsiveness to me during all of my phone calls and texts. What concerns me about our snow removal are several things. As you can imagine, I also got a whole bunch of calls from former city employees and current city employees. I guess my question to the mayor is, why do we have these people, and I think it's mostly contractors, I guess, dumping loads of snow, and I mean like 8-foot high loads of snow in front of, blocking people's driveways when there's vacant lots on each side of this one particular property, or in front of somebody's garage doors so they can't get their garage doors open. I mean, are we communicating with these contractors as to where to put snow. And I know there's not a lot of options, but that seems to be a concern. Number two, from what I understand, we have equipment that will remove snow and catapult it and shoot it into a dump truck. It's called a snow go, I believe. And I believe ours is in some far reaches of DPW right now, or OGS right now, covered with snow. And we're not using that equipment. I also believe that you saw with your own eyes that we weren't fully utilizing our equipment. I was told that you made a trip to the city garage in which there was unused equipment sitting there. And finally, I get stories of people who are working overtime or whatever, and that they aren't even doing snow removal. And so I don't believe that we don't have enough resources. I believe that we have staff that are so low in morale that they don't want to go the extra mile because of how they've been treated in the city. And I believe that we don't have good utilization of the equipment we own. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe once again, I'm getting all of the wrong feedback from numerous people. But those are the things I'd like to know is, number one, why are our contractors dumping snow where it's making people's lives absolutely miserable? Number two, why aren't we using the equipment that we own? And number three, why can't we get our staff to come in and go the extra mile? Because they used to.
With the contractors, I expect them to use common sense. Again, the magnitude of this storm created issues with just the space where you can move the snow to in the short term. And again, that initial work is plowing, where you're just, in theory, moving the snow a short distance off the street surface, where now we're in the mode of doing snow removal. The utilization of equipment, we put everything to work. There are criteria where with CDL licenses, you can only run people 16 hours, then you have to give them time off. So that there is some downtime that is built into that. And, it's the dynamics where, call it interesting, where some of the allegations raised tend to be more in a vacuum or in a public forum, as opposed to trying to create an atmosphere where you're actually methodically going through stuff and solving it. I believe Mr. LaFond is on this call. If you have any updates of who's running this, Mr. Mudaviran, if Mr. LaFond is there can add those comments or talk about
I don't know if you
the
can.
response.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I can comment on a couple of things. Okay. Going into the storm, we were prepared. We had 10 loaders under contract with us for the normal winter. Okay. The snow came down so heavy. Those 10 contractors were out with 10 loaders. And at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning, driving around with the magnitude of the storm, I called in additional loaders from Carver Construction. Okay. To answer Mrs. Ferrazzo's question about the snow go, city stopped using snow goes about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. There is one up there ready for auction. Those snow goes were used to pull snow off of the curb line during snow removal. After a street was cleared of all cars, that's when we also had a grader. And those snow goes would load trucks as they went down the street. The only snow go we have is not in use. Every piece of equipment we have, to give you an example of the magnitude of this storm, is right now we have 20 trucks from the state and roughly 20 trucks hauling with Carver, not counting the 20 additional loaders we have. So if we're looking at putting on equipment, we would need about 60 more pieces of equipment and about 60 more people to drive those pieces of equipment. The snow being piled up, that is unfortunate, and that is because a lot of these loader operators and the private contractors are working 12 hours. They're switching. They're not familiar with our city streets. When we call them in as an emergency, That's why we do go in afterwards. If there is an issue, somebody got blocked in, we send in Park, Snap, or other equipment to move that. You know, I agree. It happens. We apologize for that, but we do go in and move it. If we block somebody's driveway, we block somebody's garage, it's done. As for staff, well, we have 30 MEOs. That includes my water, sewer, and street division. We've had, out of the 25 pieces of equipment we have, 22 of them been running constantly. 3 have been down for breakdowns. If you want to talk about morale, one thing is, look at the salaries that the city is paying. Unfortunately, everybody around us is around $6 more an hour, okay? If you want to correct things, that's where we start. You want to compensate our employees for the work they do and get them to come to work. They've got to be paid for it. You know, if you want to go into other things, I do have a list of the employees that did come in. Out of those 30 employees, 6 are out sick or COVID, or unfortunately a death in the family. So we're working with about 21 employees, which was keeping our 21 pieces of equipment going. After that, we only had a 10% return on our employees, meaning only the same ones were coming back. The first 16 hours of the snowstorm, we had 6 wing blades out. We owned 6 wing blades. After that, they sat idle because the wing drivers didn't return to work. They didn't want overtime. It's very difficult to fight a storm, and I agree that we have to look at our staff and what we can do to keep them coming back. But when we have a storm like this, we need our staff, and we didn't have them.
Mr. Mudavera?
OGS has been working very good with the police department. They are out towing cars. The unfortunate thing in a storm like this is the tow companies are also very busy towing cars out because cars have been stuck. People tried to go out. They shouldn't have been out in this storm. They were stuck in intersections, so tow companies were moving those vehicles too. Tow companies aren't in the habit of shoveling cars out when they're parked on the street and they're covered with 5 feet of snow. They'll pull a car out, but they're not going to shovel the car out. The first part of the storm was very difficult. We were assisting emergency medical crews. Their rigs were getting stuck in different parts of the city. Our own trucks were getting stuck. They were going up small streets, not being able to get through. We had to send loaders in to pull them out, along with pulling out ambulances and fire apparatus. I think our crew, for what we did have out there, did a great job, but it was a very difficult storm, and we do have to improve. And whether it's increasing our equipment and considerably increasing our staff, that's a decision that the council will have to make.
Mr. LaFont, when did we bring on the outside contractors?
Our contractors were on, our crew started at 6 p.m. the night of the storm to pre-salt and get ready. So my crew was on already prior to the snow coming. Contractors were brought in at 10 p.m. and at 6 a.m. I called in additional contractors because we were assuming 8 to 12 inches of snow, not 30 inches of snow, not almost a complete whiteout. Our drivers had trouble even seeing the road. The snow was forming so much on the windshields, they had to keep pulling over. So we were ready at 6 p.m. The crew started for pre-salting and getting ready. Private contractors came in around 10 o'clock at night. And then at 6 a.m., I called additional resources from Carver, and we brought in 10 more loaders.
So do we still have these outside contractors working along with our crew?
They are still working, yes. We have right now, we have a few state agencies in. They have 2 loaders, 18 to 20 trucks. It varies if one of theirs goes down, and they have 3 skid steers. I have Carver with 13 loaders and 16 to 20 trucks. I have outside contractor Kendall with 4 loaders and I think 3 trucks. Larnard was helping in the Bellevue area. So we have a number of contractors out hauling snow to a number of different sites. We're hauling snow to Foster Avenue, the Fear Avenue, Oregon Avenue, and we've prepared some other sites for snow removal to stock it.
Mr. Mudavera?
Go ahead. Ms. Porterfield.
So I just want to know, kind of just go over the kind of calls that I heard from people, and mostly, for the most part, it was about the side streets, which um, I have to say were in deplorable condition. They were like one way for a long time, and even like day two into the storm, there were still one way streets around. Um, Personally, someone tried to come. My brother, who doesn't live in the area, tried to come in and help, and he got stuck on a street, and he just couldn't go any further. He just turned around and went back to where he lives because he could not get through to get here. So the side streets is a major complaint that I'm hearing about, and I heard about us towing immediately. And I have to say, with the mayor, that should be our last resource. And let's just keep in mind that many of the streets don't have alternate parking. You can park on either side, and should people say to themselves, well, listen, it's going to snow, we'll all park on one side. Make sure they make that decision among themselves. That would be ideal. However, there are many side streets that there's no alternate parking. You can park on either side and nothing can happen because there is no odd even parking. So that a lot of that happened. So when the tow trucks came, they swooped around the car and then plowed out what they could and swooped around the car because there was nothing saying that people could not park there. I feel like when we have these storms, we should go to a process of you can only park on this side of the street this day and then move back and forth so that our snowplows can get through and not just have like one lane of driving. I saw people actually have what I call a standoff because they came in from both ends of the street and they couldn't pass each other. So then they had to decide who was going to back up. And I saw that happen several times right in front of my house. It actually happened to me. I was out driving. I was like, I couldn't get back. So I tried a street that I thought would be the street. And it happened where people were eventually polite and backed up. But the side streets were major issues. That's what a lot of what I heard. And in addition to that, once people did dig themselves out, plowed themselves out, however they got out, and the snow plows returned once again to bank in people's driveways. That is a consistent problem, and we really have to. I can't believe that there's no way to figure that out. There has to be, because people pay people to clear their sidewalks, which is required by the city. They pay people to clear their driveways, or they do it themselves. And then a plow truck comes along and dumps all that snow right back on the sidewalk, which when a snow comes off of a plow, it's not as easy to move as that snow once was when it originally fell. So we really have to we definitely have to have a plan. It sounds like Mr. LaFond was saying that the plows and trucks started getting out like well into the storm. And I guess I'm wondering why we didn't start a little bit earlier, so that since it was predicted it's going to be that many inches of snow, why we didn't like get the first go around and then come back again. So those are the kind of things that I've been hearing from people, and I appreciate this fact that we're responsive on some levels, but some people I was hearing back from again and again that I called you about this or I sent this to you and still nothing has happened. So and I always forwarded whatever I got on. So I think we definitely have to have a system where people, if they have concerns like that, can a direct place where they can make those concerns, and we can make sure that we get to those streets and then document that concern was handled, and move on to the next street. But the side streets were a major issue. I understand priority streets, getting them cleared first, but the side streets where a lot of people got stuck, as was said, is something that we also have to figure out how we do that and do that better. I don't expect a major storm. I'm not a meteorologist, but I hope we don't have another major storm like this. But should we have one, we should definitely have a plan in place. It seems like we had this conversation last year when we had a major storm. So those are the things we should address: the side streets and blocking people's driveways with snow and their sidewalks once they've cleared them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from my colleague?
Yeah, Mr. Mudavaren.
Go ahead, Mr. Palomini.
Yeah, this is to either the mayor or Mr. LaFond. Couple questions. First, do we have mandatory overtime for employees when we're in a situation of state of emergency, or I'm not quite sure what all is in the language of the contract. And how might we enforce that? And secondly, with regards to equipment, would it be beneficial for us to look into some more nimble equipment for some of the side streets that, maybe, for lack of better words, something along those snow shooters like you see on some of the sidewalks and some of the side streets? And the last question, is there a possibility of working with, granted, this storm was completely abnormal, but for a regular storm, could we work possibly with TransFinder to create routes for our snow plows as well as private contractors to ensure that all our side streets at least get, hit occasionally during a storm so that everybody kind of has some benefit of plowing? Thank you.
Under the contract, we don't have the ability for mandatory overtime. The equipment, again, in the capital budget for this year, which the council did not move ahead on, recommended the purchase of a snow blower piece of equipment, which would have given us a little more flexibility in some of these situations. Again, with the amount of snow we had, again, it's not a plowing issue, it's more of a removal issue. With TransFinder, we've put up where the plows have been in the last period of time. My goal on that is having those routes mapped out and to be able to tell the residents where the plow is going to be in the next hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. We did not move ahead of that. Again, when the current capital budget was deferred, we didn't put up some of the Wi-Fi network. We didn't expand it. The money just wasn't there. So we weren't able to necessarily do the stuff with the school district or with people that were working from home or students that were home, or in this case, the one piece of equipment that had been recommended a year ago, we didn't purchase. So those are things that we're still looking at and looking at improving the overall delivery of services. And at this point in the budget process, the council has moved that capital budget forward, which is largely what was last year. We've just put those things that'll be hopefully moved in the spring when we again go out for long-term bonding.
Any other comments from my colleagues regarding snow plowing removal? Thank you, everyone.
So now, can I just say really, Mr. Mudavaren, that if in the future the council has some way to be able to direct people or to have people connect directly and to know that they're like, if there's they can send their complaint and they could see that it got taken care of. I think that would be helpful for people to see, or at least to see where they are on the list of getting their concern met. I think that's important to people to know that it's being worked on, it's been received. So I think as a city, if we have if an online process, or, because we all definitely got a call from the county, from the city, as saying, hey, there's a big storm coming and here's what's going on. So if there's also a way that we could have people be able to tap into the city to say, hey, here's my situation, this is where I live, when can I expect it to be handled, I think would be ideal for people as we move through this process, and would be something as part of our planning process as we move forward. Maybe we won't have another storm in 2021, in 2020, but 2021 is almost here and we're not quite through the winter yet. So I think that we should definitely consider having that as part of our planning process moving forward.
We do have a system in place for complaints that are logged in. It's interesting when you say that. I don't believe we currently have the feature on it to let the person know where their complaint is in terms of the follow through. So we could look at that, and I again encourage people and council members to use that system because it becomes a better management tool to get it out to the department heads. And it's not only snow removal, but it's filling potholes or other issues that residents face and problems that need to be addressed by city staff.
Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, is that something that we can institute fairly quickly? In light of, the storm that we just had, is that something that could be added onto the website with ease?
The ability to rank the complaints,
Yeah.
Without checking with the staff or what is available from the software provider, that might not even be a feature that's there, so we have to go back to them and have that code specifically written, but I'll follow up on that for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify? I wasn't asking for ranking, but I was asking for a time frame when people can expect it to be addressed. Not so not necessarily a ranking, but just to say, hey, in 2 hours we'll be through on Lexington, something like that. So people just have a sense of when they can expect the plow to come through.
And that's what I was trying to do with TransFinder, with where it shows where the plows have been, would be able to, as Mr. Palomini pointed out, we got a predetermined route that optimizes the utilization of the vehicle. And so that that the plow is going to go in front of your house in a half an hour, you wait to shovel your driveway because you don't want to start now, you've got it finished in a half an hour, and then the plow comes by and puts it back in. But yes, those are things that we were looking at.
One other follow-up question, if you don't mind, is there for a way for us to see, actually, since that TransFinder was used, for us to actually see what it mapped out like and how it was actually deployed after it's all said and done?
That was open to the public, so everybody could look on the website and see that.
No, I mean, once it's all done, is there a product, something we could look at to say, okay, this is how it worked out? Because if we're talking about evaluating how it was done, do we talk about, okay, this is what happened and maybe we need to change something? So that's why I want to know if there's a completed map.
Go back and see where a vehicle was, what time, what speed it was going. That's used for, management, where people were saying a plow was speeding down the street, it was going too fast. We'll go back and can verify what the speed is. We can track where it was at any particular time. Now, those features are only incorporated on the city vehicles. The private contractors we bring in don't have those features on it. It's something that we may think of making that a requirement when we, look for contractors to supplement the city workforce.
Thank you.
May I have a question? With regards to the snow banks that were dumped onto private property, sidewalk, driveway, and onto buildings, are they planned to go back and remove those in the next day or two?
That's what we're doing now is part of that snow removal, is getting it cleared out.
Yeah, because I did receive several emails which I forwarded to you and pictures with regards to that. They're worried in the sense that, the last snowstorm we went out a week or two after and we ticketed them because they were unable to move the snow/ice.
Yeah, and Mr. President, the city will plow the snow off the street, and when it ends up on the sidewalk, it's not our responsibility to move it from the sidewalk. It's where we have the extraordinary amount of snow in the big banks that create hazards for, it limits the field of view for drivers and other things. We want those removed to avoid traffic accidents and open up intersections, and again, minimize that impact that's happened on residents and businesses.
No, and I think that's what I'm mentioning about is the corner where we remove the snow from the street and kind of dump it there with the intention to go pick it up back. But the last snowstorm, we end up issuing tickets maybe 17, 20, or 20-something tickets, and people are worried. Some of them are worried that the same stone bank they have on their property again, and they are concerned that if it doesn't remove in a timely manner, they might end up getting another ticket again. So I would like if we can at least address that. I would really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments from my colleagues with regards to this item?
Mr. Budaveran?
Go ahead, please.
I know that we're going to be talking, I think the next agenda item is the parking, but again, I just want to reiterate that, or perhaps ask the mayor or, whether we're going to be doing any increase in education to the public, to just be able to give more guidance. And I know, we tried our best, but to get more education out there about where they can park their cars, planning ahead. I mean, many of us have lived in cities all of our lives, and when you know there's a storm coming, you got to figure something out. I think a lot of us were responding to people saying, here's where you can go park your car. But what are the plans for trying to expand that kind of public education?
It's, we do outreach through press releases. It's the widely variant nature of weather, where a lot of times we've had things where the prediction's going to be a major storm, and then we don't get a big storm. This one went in the other direction. We thought it was going to be relatively small. The original numbers were 4 to 6 inches, then it was 4 to 8, then it was maybe getting up to 10 to 12 inches. As Paul pointed out, at that point it just exploded, and we were at 30 inches in very quick time. So it's when that unknown factor of the initial prediction makes it hard for people to appropriately react or plan on what they should do or shouldn't do. But the ongoing education it's difficult. We always try and message that. And the first storm is always the most difficult. That people are still in what I'll call a warm weather mode. In last year and this year, our first storms were the biggest storms.
Just one more question. Do we have some mechanism, and perhaps this is already in place, but as Ms. Perazzo said, many of the calls that we all got were emergencies. And I agree, you reacted very quickly, and every call that I got, people responded quickly and got rid of the snow, et cetera. I was most concerned about the calls that I got from people who really had critical health issues. I got another message today from someone who's, they couldn't take their grandmother for her dialysis appointment because they couldn't get out. Those kinds of situations, do we have a mechanism in place where people can sort of register somehow that they have these major health issues, and so somehow or another we're paying attention to those folks, and maybe this is already in place and I just don't know about it. I was just wanting to bring that up. That's my last question, I promise.
It's I'm not aware of one where we index for access or egress or access to the building. National Grid maintains some sites where you have people who are on life support equipment or things within their home that require electricity. And so when we have major power outages, that those are responded to differently. But we were, to the best I could tell, able to keep up with all the calls that went through the 911 dispatch, even though some of our response times were slower only because of the snow conditions on the street. And the only calls that really backed up were the ones that were for cars blocking the road. There were a lot of people who just abandoned their cars in place.
Excuse me. Mr. Rivera?
Go ahead, please.
So I like Miss Patrick's idea. I think that's great. And so is it possible that those folks could register with our fire department And so therefore, we know who people are that are, so it's not National Grid and we have to try to reach out to somebody that may be difficult to reach, but our fire department, which is right there, they register, they know people that have to go to dialysis or whatever type of life-saving treatment that they have, so that we make sure that they're not blocked in. And also, I just really, I'm struggling with the fact that contractors, outside or otherwise, would dump on people's personal properties. That just seems not something you should do. And it shouldn't even be a thought that this is someone's personal property and I'll dump the snow there because it's most convenient. And then people then become responsible. So I think that if we're talking about outside contractors, we have to, we have to say we just can't dump on people's properties, people's personal property, blocking their access to their driveways, to their garages and all of that. I just don't understand, how that happens, but it shouldn't happen.
I agree with you.
So, Mr. Mudavera?
Go ahead, Ms. Karen.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think this is great. I think there was an inordinate amount of snow that fell in a very short period of time. And I think, with what was, with your response and the response of the team, I thought was good, considering, the amount of snow that we had. But, my concern is back to what's the solution? How are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen, that we don't end up like we are right now? And I understand that, right now we have a lot of snow, but if we get 6 inches of snow next week, we're going to be in the same predicament because the snow's not melting. And, I guess my concern is that, we need to have a plan or a solution, and we need to, figure it out together. What do we need to do? And I guess I'm just hoping that we could have, open dialogue on what you need from the council to make sure that you have the tools necessary to ensure that we have the ability to clear the snow from the streets in the city and, ensure our residents are safe.
But we're doing aggressive snow removal, as Mr. LaFond outlined the amount of equipment that's being deployed right now in the city. The streets will be opened up, and if we get a 6-inch storm next week or week after, we're going to be able to handle it. It's the 30-inch storm that becomes a challenge not only for this city, but other communities. And so we're working through this, and what I would ask is, the entire capital budget was deferred. What my personal concern is, where the council declined to act on the capital budget this year, basically put forth, and you've tentatively approved that same capital budget for next year. But when it comes time to borrow, I will tell you the city is going to be in a far weaker financial position than we were last year. We just went through this period where not only Schenectady, but other communities were aggressively lobbying for money and assistance from the federal government. We're not getting that. You changed my budget and have made some assumptions in terms of revenue that, again, we've got to start to deal with, because those assumptions just may not be correct.
Mr. Mutaviran?
Go ahead, Ms. Peraza.
I'm sorry, but you're not going to turn this around on the council, Mayor. This is not a matter of equipment. This is a matter of staffing. We have the equipment, we don't have the staffing, and we don't have the management to get this job done. And it is not because the council didn't put forth the capital budget. This is because we don't have butts in seats in this in the equipment that we have. So that's my final word on this. But really, to spin it around on the council, that's just wrong.
Yeah, and let me add to that also. When we asked for the capital expenditure to be put on hold until we can analyze what is going on with the city with regards to the COVID-19, and then we end up borrowing $7 million, I did reach out to Mr. Anthony Ferrari, and I can recall Mr. Palomini also and myself And Mr. Ferrari did not want to proceed with the capital expenditure on these equipment this year because we had just borrowed $7 million. And the intention was to put it into next year's budget. So at no point in time, the council refused to move forward. It's a matter of the timing and a matter of what was needed. And I think the council majority wanted to move with certain equipment, and those equipment were in consideration to move forward with. Any other questions from my colleagues regards to this item? Thank you. The next item is discussion parking during the winter months. Mr. Palamini.
Yes, this is something we discussed a while ago and unfortunately got sidetracked with the virus and didn't get back to where we should have. Mr. Coluccio is on the call with us. He and his staff have done quite a bit of work on this. And what I think I'll do is just turn it over to him to begin with. If you could allow him to share his screen so he could show us some maps that they've created.
Thank you, Mr. Palamani.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can able to share my screen because I'm going to lose all my my screen that I'm focusing on here for this meeting. Can Mr. Colucci just talk about what the plan is and then email it to the council?
Well, I can talk about it, but what I wanted to show you was an interactive live map that shows all of the parking regulations in the entire city that have been mapped out so that you can get an idea of where we have alternate parking, one-sided parking, no parking restrictions at all. You're certainly not going to get the visual without looking at it. And one of the things that Mr. Palameni and I and the mayor had discussed is the potential to look at an area of Bellevue that we could, potentially do some additional alternate side parking.
Yeah, if he could, I mean, right now, all you have is the agenda up there. I don't know if you could let him share the screen or not. I mean, that would be beneficial.
Okay, I think I'm going to get it. Thank you. Okay, so like I said, I hope you can all see this. This is an interactive Esri map that I created. It has all of the parking regulations and or no regulations for every street in the city. Just quickly, if you look at the purple streets are where alternate parking exists. One-sided parking, I think that's blue. It's a little hard for me to see. Yeah, that's blue for one-sided parking. The priority streets are in green. I actually can, hold on one second. So you can actually filter it here. And if you wanted to see just the priority streets. So those are where all the priority streets are. If you wanted to just see alternate parking streets, one-sided parking, these are streets with no parking at all on either side. These are streets that have seasonal no parking, so these are no parking within the winter months. I'm just going to turn that intersection layer off a second. And obviously the most important would be for no regulations. So there are a great deal of streets in the city that have no regulations. Very quickly, it would be easy for someone to say, hey, we should just put alternate parking on those streets. But unfortunately, there's a lot of streets in the city that are very narrow. And you know, even if you did like in the stockade, the streets in the stockade, and that's an easy one to pick. The streets are so narrow. If you were to do odd even parking, as soon as that first car moves over to the other side of the street, then that street's impassable. So it's not always an automatic fix to put alternate parking on every street in the city, but you can certainly analyze different streets to see. You know, this gives us a tool to be able to analyze different streets in the city to see which ones might be a good fit for a parking regulation. So I'll let Mr. Palomini speak again. This is a section of Bellevue that we were looking at.
Yep. And so thank you to Mr. Coluccio and staff. I mean, putting this map together took quite a bit of effort and obviously is very beneficial. So in discussing, I mean, one of the things I thought initially was, you know, let's do alternate side parking throughout the entire city. But in the discussions with Mr. Coluccio and some others, became quite apparent that, you know, this wasn't something that we should do right off the bat and might not be feasible in a lot of areas. So in discussions with Mr. Coluccio, he looked at the map, we were looking at it together, and he made the suggestions of what about doing a pilot in Bellevue? Because as you can see here, there's quite a few streets there where it could be beneficial. And he also made the connection that, you know, they are farthest away from the Foster Avenue plant. So it might be a good idea to do a pilot project there, see how it works, and then move on from there. So mostly what I wanted to do tonight was bring this forward, let everybody see the map, see if there's potential to maybe move forward on a pilot project, and just get some discussion and questions going.
So I just want to add one thing, if I could, Mr. Palomini, is
Sure.
that so staff is just starting to be able to use this map. And, you know, it gives the ability to understand where they can deploy plows on certain days to know what streets or what sides of the streets are clear, that we can send a plow up, say, Division Street, because they have alternate side parking, and clear the street on the north or the east side on the one day of the week, and then come back on the next day and be able to clear the other side, as opposed to having to wait till we, and those are just following the normal rules that are out there, as opposed to having to post different ones and making sure everyone is aware of the new regulations. So having alternate parking, has a great benefit by normalcy for residents, and if you do it year round, you also get the benefit of not having your street be able to be cleaned better, as well as not having junk or vehicles that have not, a lot of streets that have no parking regulations at all have vehicles on them that might not move for 3 months. So by having this alternate parking, or some sort of alternate parking, gives the ability to require these people to keep their cars in decent shape and or get them off the road if they are not road ready.
Yeah, that's a very good point. When my initial suggestion would be to do it all year, so we could get the benefit of the street sweeper full benefit. But with that, just open it up to see if any of my colleagues have any questions or comments.
Whose committee is this? Mr. Mudavaran?
That's mine, yeah. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Palomini, could you just kind of explain, you talked about a pilot project, but could you talk about what the parameters of that would really look like? How do you envision this to look?
to do alternate side parking in the Bellevue area, which is outlined on the screen, just to see how it works. So we can look at it, let's say in 6 months' time, say this worked well, or this, this needs to be fixed, or this just didn't work, and then see where other areas in the city we could implement it to make things more efficient for our crews, but also better for our residents to make sure not only for snow, but even for the street sweeper during the summer months.
Right. So are the regulations consistent throughout Bellevue right now? Because I don't think so based on the map, because some are yellow, some are purple. So are the parking regulations consistent throughout Bellevue? At this point, will we have to change some streets?
Well, I think that's what we're trying to tell you is this orange color ones, there's no regulations on those streets at all where they're orange. So you could park on both sides of the street unlimited.
That's in Bellevue, yeah, but what about these like purple colors?
So the purple are the alternate parking signs, and these are 24-hour move over, 9 a.m., 24-hour, Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the one side, and Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday on the other. Those are our typical alternate parking signs.
Okay, so right now Bellevue has mixed parking, alternate and no regulations. Is that correct?
Yeah, but everybody does. There's no section of the city that everybody has. If you look at the map, they're all different colors.
Mm-hmm.
With Woodlawn having the most of no regulations, but yeah, every section of the city has mixed. In fact, you go to Central State Street here, and 90% of them have alternate parking, and then you come to Robinson Street, and it's one-sided parking.
Mm-hmm.
So none's the same. None of them are the same, and I think that's helps that we're looking to try to get a little uniformity. Makes it a little more consistent for the plows. So just as an example, if these were all say 12th is actually seasonal alternate parking. So let's say there's 3 of them that have alternate parking. A plow's going to come down the street, go around, and then he gets to this one and there's no regulation on it. What's he do? He's stuck. So to have that, uniform on several blocks together, makes it very efficient for the plows to be able to move along those streets.
Oh, okay, and I just have a couple more follow-up questions. So, is the signage currently good in in the areas that have signage? Are they up to date? Are they legible? So, how is our signage in the areas that have signage, and for parking regulations? And in addition, in terms of this, has Mr. LaFawn been part of the conversation as you put this together, and as it relates to plowing? Was there some input from that level?
So I'll give you a couple of questions. One is we change hundreds of parking signs every year. We do it based on complaints or by our staff just checking the streets themselves. I won't tell you that every single sign that's out there is perfect, but we certainly strive to make sure that as many of the streets are checked as possible and the signs are changed. As far as Mr. LaFawn and plowing, we've had several discussions, and I know he's still on this call, and I'm sure he has always been and is in favor of any type of parking restriction that will allow his vehicles to get down the road faster.
Mr. Mutamera?
Go ahead, please.
So, Mr. Coluccio, thank you very much. This is excellent. I think it's a fabulous idea. I think it's a great way for us to start with getting organized parking throughout the city. Years ago, I had this conversation with someone about the fact that, back in the 70s, the snow could get plowed without a problem. And the reason the snows got plowed without a problem is because there was one car per household or no cars. People walked everywhere. Nowadays, there's 2, 3, if you still have your teenagers at home, they have cars. So the cars are part of the problem with plowing. And I think if we can institute a comprehensive system like this, I think it'll help combat the plow issues along with the street cleaning issues that we deal with in the city. So I commend you, and I would love to move forward with this as a pilot program.
Thank you.
Mr. Mudavera?
Go ahead, Ms. Porterfield.
Right. So how was the pilot area determined in terms of, you know, where we would begin this? I heard some mention of the fact it's the furthest away from Foster Avenue, and I'm not sure how that plays into it. So how did we determine where we would start with the pilot program?
So the idea was that the streets, if you look in Bellevue, some are already alternate, the other ones aren't. So if you made all the streets alternate, it's not, you only really have the two types of use. So with the exception of that one road. So it's not a huge lift. And it gives us a good idea of the efficiency of our equipment that's being used since it is the furthest distance. But the idea largely started based on the types of use of the roads.
And I'll also add your question about the idea that it's the farthest away from Foster Avenue. So streets that don't have any kind of parking restrictions or don't have alternate parking or anything on either side are get more complaints when they have cars parked on them because cars are parked on both sides of the street. So by doing this area farthest away, you're saving some of the back and forth that the city crews would go to these areas farthest out from the city.
All right. And just so, could you, you know, I saw that you have the map and layers, and thank you for the maps. You always have great maps, visuals all the time. Could you provide us the maps, like the one with all of it, and then the different types of parking? Could you supply those maps to us so individually, so the alternate versus no parking regulations, and can we get that?
No, so I'm not going to give you individual maps. I'll give you access to this application, which you can pick and choose the layers that you want. And then actually when you go down to street level on here, you can actually click on it and see the regulation.
Access is fine as long as I can take a look beyond to this right now.
Yeah,
that would be fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you also please provide that to the entire council?
I will do so. It's actually, you know, the plans is to make it public. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
We want people to be able to come over here and put their address in and find out if you live on say I don't know, Robinson Street, right? And then just click on it, zoom right into it, and you can go down and you can see the regulations on the streets, right? So, and make it quicker for someone to know if they're going to a friend's house or something, where they can park.
So, Mr. Mudavera?
Go ahead, Ms. Karen.
So, can I make a motion that we adopt this pilot program for the Bellevue area?
Do we now want to get more information in regards to this whole project before we move forward? What the whole dynamics?
Well, I think we're only
the rollout, what's going to happen, everything in detail before we decide to move forward, and that can be provided to the council so we have a better understanding.
I think Mr. Coluccio has done a fabulous job here, and I think he's the expert in this. Okay.
So we don't really need the council for any legislation or something. It's done. This would be done within the operations of the city. But I think that we're looking for an endorsement from you. I think that's why Mr. Palmini brought it to the table, right? To see if everyone agreed that this would be a good thing to allow.
Correct. The idea is just to test it out, see how it goes. If everything goes well, great, we can implement it in other sections of the city. If there's things to be learned, we'll learn them. The neighborhood association, granted, is small sample size, but when they were talked to about it, just briefly, months ago, there was some support there. Just made no sense to move forward without asking them if there was some sort of positive response to it, and there was. But the idea is just to see if we can get this going and then move it forward throughout other sections of the city so we can gain the efficiencies and the improvements that we're all seeking.
Mr. Motivaran?
Go ahead, Mr. Kosha.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate the information here from Mr. Cluccio. But again, several of these streets that we're talking about in Bellevue obviously have parking on both sides of those streets right now. All I could think of is that Central State Street area that you're talking about, Division and Brandywine and Robinson, where cars are parked on both sides of the street. And now if we're going to implement one side parking, I would almost think that we really need to take a look at what is the vehicles, how many vehicles are out there now utilizing parking on these streets? And, are we going to put some of our residents, force them to come to the other side and not have parking on the other side of the street? Look at it. I will be supportive of this 100%, Mr. Palmetti and everybody on the council, but I just think you really have to take a look at the number of cars, the number of vehicles that could be affected by doing this in just that little zone that you're talking about in Bellevue, and even get some input, even a survey or whatever from those residents. Obviously, this doesn't need any home rule because, as Mr. Cluccio said, you can do this right in-house. But at the same time, we don't want to tick off people who are used to parking on both sides of the street, and now I can no longer park in front of my house and I have to park on the other side. And guess what? There's no parking there because then my neighbor across the street is parking there. Just my 2 cents for the conversation. I think it should be continue to be pursued and fleshed out a little bit more, but it's something really to take a look at, and good work by everybody involved in this.
So can we also have the neighborhood association buy into this and go there with something like sort of a petition so that we can have the resident there buy into it and agreeing to it? I don't know
I'm
if
not
we
going to
need to
ask
do that.
the neighborhood association to go out there during a virus.
Well, we can do a survey and ask them to share it.
Then go ahead, do a survey.
So one of the reasons.
John, don't get mad at me, John, but you do a great survey, Mr. Palmetti. I'm just kidding. You know that, my friend.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Kosher, and I agree with you very much. But the situation is, we're never going to solve the problems we're having if we continue doing the same thing. So it's either make some changes, and yes, some people will not be happy, but hopefully the services improve. That compensates for a little bit of inconvenience that people might have. But I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, John.
Well, also, just for the record, we were talking about the Central State Street. All of these streets in purple are alternate parking. You can only park on one side of all these streets. So, and certainly the volume of cars in the Central State Street area on street is much greater than in Bellevue, in the areas we're talking about. Certainly, we would never do just global and say, do all of these. We evaluate each street individually and make sure that there's no issues with doing that. I mean, that's how we've done them for the 30 some odd years that I've done it here.
And the other thing with Bellevue too is not 100%, but a lot of those residences have off-street parking as well.
Yep.
absolutely, to Mr. Kosher's point, some people will be inconvenienced, but you know, you're talking a lot of off-street parking in those areas.
Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead.
So I too would like to see it, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, an explanation. I would like to see it in writing though, however, how that's gonna work. For a couple reasons, I just, like to see things in writing. And in addition to that, when people call, because they will, we need to be able to have something to refer back to and not just our memory or notes from this conversation. So I think it would be absolutely important for us to have what the pilot program is supposed to look like as it rolls out. And so we have the information. And Mr. Coluccio has said that he doesn't need the council's, they're just looking for council support, and the council does not have to have any type of resolution to move forward on this. Am I understanding that correctly? You could just move forward without, and the council could support it, but even if the tonight that doesn't happen, the plan could still move forward without the council's making any resolutions moving forward. Is that correct?
That would be correct. But that's certainly not our goal. Our goal was to get the council to, be in favor of it. And it was something that Councilman Palomeni came to me to look to see how we could improve some of the services, and this was a way to do it.
I think it's a good idea. I personally would like to see us maybe do something only during certain times of the year, so that people aren't constantly doing that. However, that wasn't, this is the only time the discussion has been brought forward as a group. So, obviously other plans are already in place. But again, I'd like to see those things in writing of how it would work, for my own complete understanding, and also to be able to share with people as they reach out.
So
That
this
would
would
definitely be a request.
So this would be a pilot project, first of all, so it'd be a certain time frame just to see how it goes. And, this is something that we have discussed previously, granted without the map. But, we can certainly get something written and put together, but, again, a pilot project.
Mr. Mudavaren?
Go ahead, Ms. Patrick.
I'm just wondering, did I see, Mr. Coluccio, when you were showing us this, that if it goes into effect, that someone would be able to access the parking regulations too? So actually, this would probably supplement some of the signage issues around that we might have been talking about earlier regarding the snowstorm. I mean, if people have access to this on the website, they could actually click on their street and see what the regulations are for parking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that I think that's a really good feature, because I think it would save us. I think it would make the signage clear for snow, just like we were talking about, and be more cost effective at the same time in terms of that. Not having to add signage necessarily.
Well, I mean, we still have to post the signage.
Yeah, we have to have the signage. I'm just saying, I think that this is really a great cost-effective way for someone to look up the parking.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of people who have called and said, I just got a ticket on my street and we haven't had parking here. We've never had parking restrictions here. And I'd look it up, and the parking regulations had been there 10 years, and they just were lucky they never got a ticket.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I guess we'll put something together and come back. We need to do something with regards to parking and cleaning up snow, as well as the street sweeper. And so we'll come back, but and have something in writing.
Thank you. Any other business for public safety? May I have a
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Call to order the Finance Committee. The first item on the agenda is discussion of senior exemptions with Mr. Kosher.
Mr. Palmetti, I think we should all take time here to order some Grubhub from Ferrari's restaurant here. It's been a long day. You realize that? My goodness. Long night here. Anyway, as some of you may have read, this past Friday, the governor has signed an extension modifying the disasters due to the COVID. And one of the pieces in there, if you go to page 19 there, he issued a continued executive order. Starts on the third paragraph with subdivision 7, where it says the real property tax law, to the extent necessary to permit the governing body of an assessing unit to adopt a resolution directing the assessor to grant exemptions pursuant to such section of the 2021 assessment roll to all property owners who received that exemption on their 2020 assessment roll, thereby dispensing with the need of the renewal of the applications for such persons. And of course, we're talking about our seniors who are right now currently in the process of having to gather their documents and the required information to be sent and be brought in person for the most part, or mailed to Molly McElroy. But again, by simple resolution here of this council, we can foreclose or bypass all that. And as long as those seniors were receiving the exemption on the 2020 assessment roll, they would not have to provide this information. So I'd just like to see if we can get support from the council to do this, because again, this goes in effect January 1st, and see if we can get this moved forward. And hopefully Andrew Colden or somebody in the office there can prepare the resolution that we can move forward on.
Are there any questions? All right, then I would recommend doing a motion to do this resolution.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, the mayor's talking there.
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Colden may be able to answer that. Mr. Kosher pointed out where the governor's order takes effect January 1st. I don't know if the council can do it this cycle, so it would be on the agenda next Monday, or you'd have to wait and do it that first cycle in January. But just to check on that, and whatever one's the most expedient.
What's the reason for delaying, Gary?
Just the governor's order takes effect, as you pointed out, at January 1st. And so it doesn't grant the authority to the legislative body until January 1st to enact that exemption or carry the exemption forward.
I'm reading here, effective December 18th, 2020, Gary.
So if that's,
he signed it. Yeah, I'm reading the resolution here.
that's when he signed it, but it's the
Right.
effective date. So, and I agree with you, Ed, we should go ahead, and it's just a question of whether we do it this.
Yeah. All right. Well, if
cycle.
anybody can look into it, Andrew look into it or somebody, but I appreciate that, Gary. Just somebody take a peek at this. So, because again, I know several of my neighbors are getting their information together right now. And they were going to be calling Samantha or Molly to come down there. And I told them because the governor had done this. So whatever we can do, Mr. Mayor and Andrew, to follow up on this. And if we can get it on the agenda or to vote on it next Monday, that's great. Otherwise, we'll have to do it the cycle in January, sir. Thank you.
Can I make a
Can we have-
suggestion here, Mr.
Can we have Mr. Colden address that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councilperson Kosher and Mayor McCarthy. I think the best way to handle this, and this is something I'm gonna have to look into, is pass something out of committee tonight if the council is seeking to do this, and then between now and obviously the council meeting, we'll have an answer on when this should be happening. So at least we have, if it's the next council meeting, we'll be able to do it. If not, we'll just have a table and essentially delayed until it becomes effective.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And again, thank you, John and Karen. Thank you, folks.
yep. So I believe we had a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is Mr. Gugamuk with CDBG CV2 budget allocation approvals.
Good evening, City Council and John. I just want to correct that it's CDBG CV3. In response to the coronavirus pandemic, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has allocated $619,061 in stimulus funding through the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG CV3, to the city of Schenectady. There's 5 sections that we worked on in the city development: public services, youth engagement, economic recovery, housing, neighborhood stabilization, city PPE, COVID-19 supplies and equipment, and city admin expenses. The development department, we have had virtual meetings with our partners, service providers, and community to identify the most immediate needs. Virtually, this is essentially a replica of the CDBG CV1, which has been effective thus far. So we recommend the city council approve the CDBG CV3 budget allocation.
Are there any questions? All right, can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next is the Board of Assessment Review reappointment with Mr. Mudavaren.
Thank you, Mr. Palomini. I did email this last week to all the members, the council members. I did have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Hager, whose terms on this board expire September the 30th of this year. He is willing to continue serving on the board as a member. This individual is very valuable to this board, and I would ask for favorable consideration to keep Mr. Hager on this board.
Are there any
Unless
questions?
there is other nomination from the council.
Are there any questions? Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Lastly, discussion waiving the interest and penalties on the first quarter property taxes in 2021 with Mr. Mudavaren.
Thank you, Ms. Palomini. Back in April, we did a similar waiver, and our county colleagues are proposing at their side to waive the interest and penalty on the first quarter, starting January the 15th through April the 15th of 2020. And I think that's something that we should consider and work in with the county on this, to waive the interest and penalty, and we give the homeowners a little bit more time to pay their taxes. We have seen the impact of COVID-19 on the homeowners throughout the country. So I think it's fitting that we partner with our county and waive another quarter of the interest and penalty, and to give back to our homeowners in the city.
Are there any questions?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a
Thank
motion
you.
to adjourn?
So moved.
And there's a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I want to open city planning and development, and I believe all the items on the agenda need to be done in executive session. If you could confirm, Mr. Colden.
I believe so, yes, that's correct.
All righty, and I would ask Ms. Patrick to make a motion for us to go into executive session.
So moved.
And I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we will go to executive session.
See you in a minute.